I would like to greet you all this evening. My name is Mary Brass. I'm the president of the Lennox Area Historical Society. And the members of the society are delighted that you have agreed to join us in celebrating the 100th birthday of this terrific building. But it's just an excuse for us to gather as community, and that's what really thrills us. The building is a wonderful place, but it's the community that makes it a wonderful place. So thank you all very much for coming. However, since we labeled this a 100th birthday party, I think that we should sing Happy Birthday. So, we'll sing Happy Birthday, Dear Museum.
Okay. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear museum. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. We on purpose made this a very low-key event and decided that a good way to entertain ourselves would be to ask for some stories. So many of you have been sharing them already this afternoon, but I know you are all looking forward to the master storyteller, Mr. Verlyn Hofer.
He is one that knows a lot and remembers.
Mr. Hofer, would you like to say? Your choice.
Same idea.
Does that pick up my voice?
Yes,
Yeah.
Well, you probably wonder why I'm up here. It's just a pure and simple case of age before beauty. I've been around a long time and they figure I should know something. Well, I've really been fooling them for a long time. But anyway, I guess what I'm supposed to talk about is my memories of this building and the people connected with it and so forth. One thing about, nice thing about talking about one's memories is that that's subjective rather than objective. I mean, who knows what my memories are? You'll have to disprove them or at least challenge them if you don't agree. So anyway, I wrote down a few notes and I'm glad I still got some daylight so I won't run out. Now we all know that this building was built during that period of time, or sort of at the tail end, you might say, when every small town doctor wanted his own hospital. And just in the little town of Lennox, we've had at least 3 hospitals that I know of, maybe more. And they were just simply houses that were built by a doctor and called it a hospital. And there was the one on 4th Street in Elm, and then there was the one down here at the south end of Main Street across from the park. Now that was built by a Dr. Formas. And of course I never knew Dr. Formas. He died in the 1918 flu epidemic. And but I was told, and I read about him, he was a very talented man. He was educated in classical music in Austria, I believe, or Germany. And he used to give violin lessons. He wasn't a fiddler, he was a real violinist. And highly cultured man. So he was a doctor here at the same time as Dr. Young, who was the man that was the driving force behind this building. And so the story goes that Dr. Young invited Dr. Verlyn to the community to practice with him. And I suppose part of the Oh, part of the attraction was the fact that this building was probably under construction at that time. I'm not sure. But that was 1914. And Dr. Verlyn accepted the invitation. And as far as I know, he and Dr. Young must have had a sort of a joint practice for a while at least. And then Dr. Young left in 1920. Now that's an interesting story. I don't think it should let it slip by completely. As Dr. Young, he had sort of a questionable or checkered life of sorts. And in 1920, he left Lennox. He left his wife and family, ran off with a younger woman.
Rich?
And so the legend is that to elude the law, I don't know whether he was under suspicion for bigamy or what, he ran off and lived out the rest of his life in Cuba. Now I suppose he practiced medicine there, I don't know. But that's where he died. He died in Cuba. And I remember that I never knew Dr. Young, but I knew his son. His son's name was Jimmy. And I think he was an adopted son, but I couldn't swear to that either. And Jimmy ran off and joined the Army way back in the 1930s. And then he'd come back to Lennox once in a while, and all us young teenagers would gather around him in Tony's pool hall and listen to his big stories about the Army and about him being a professional wrestler down in Texas. He was always telling us how he was a professional wrestler. I don't know how good he was, but he could tell good stories. So much for, that's all I know about the Youngs. And then Dr. Verlyn, of course, we know, evidently, he may or may not have had an office in here at that early date, like in 1915. I'm not sure that he did. And after Young left, then Dr. Verlyn had his office in the east end of the old Exchange Bank on the corner down there where the post office is now. And that's where I always remember going to the doctor as a kid. And so then, well, we better get on with the story. But like I said, this was kind of the tail end of that day and age when doctors would practice surgery and in their medical practice, you know, in different specialties, you might say, in a small town. They were more anxious to, later on, to have a surgeon do the surgery and send them off to the hospital in Sioux Falls. But, so actually the lifespan of this building as a hospital was kind of short-lived. It really wasn't very many years. Get on with this. Well, we know what happened to Dr. Young. He ran off. And then perhaps it should be noted that there was a Michael Harney. And we all know that Mrs. Harney ran this hospital. I never knew a Mr. Harney. And I don't know if anybody in Lennox ever knew Mr. Harney. But there must have been a Mr. Harney, because they had a son, Lester, and I knew Lester. But there was a Michael Harney, which in all likelihood was the father of this Mrs. Harney's husband. So that'd be, Michael would have been her father-in-law. Michael Harney came to this area in 1878, when he was 40 years old, and he homesteaded in Delaware Township, about, well, I suppose 6, 7, 8 miles south of Lennox. Well, the poor guy only lived for 8 years after he homesteaded, and he passed away. His wife preceded him in death. She died 2 years earlier in 1884, but they had 7 children. And I just presume that one of those children was Lester Harney's father. Now, Lester Harney went to high school in Lennox, and I think he was a pretty smart kid as far as what I've heard about him. And he went to school, college, I believe, and after that he took a job with the Sears and Roebuck Company, and he worked himself up on the corporate ladder a ways, and evidently accumulated some wealth. Well, Lester, I don't believe had any children, and he had a wife, and so the story goes that she preceded him in death, somewhat to maybe his satisfaction, because she apparently made it known that whatever he had in his will would be changed if she outlived him. And I don't know where this all came from, but anyway, that was the story. Well, Lester, he lived to be pretty old, and I suppose he died, oh, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. And in his will, he left a trust, set up a trust for the Boy Scout program in Lennox, South Dakota. And it's a sizable amount of money. And it's in trust in a bank in Sioux Falls. And each year, so much money is drawn out of that trust. Well, the Boy Scout troop here in Lennox are the people that are in charge of it, the committee. And I guess they felt generous. They thought that should be divided among the Boy Scouts, the Cub Scouts, and the Girl Scouts. So it's divided up each year. They each get some money to run their scouting program, which I think is a commendable thing that he did. So what are my memories of the old Harney Hospital building and its owner? You know, I knew Elizabeth Harney. I wouldn't say I knew her real well, but you know, I had some contact with her. And I have to honestly say, I never saw that poor woman smile. She was very serious and looked slightly depressed or something, I don't know. But I think this was her little kingdom. And you know, she wanted to hold on to it and do something with it. And so she was an LPN, I understand. She had some nursing background. And she would take care of expectant mothers. Babies would be born here, and she'd take care of them and the mothers for a while. I don't know if she had any other so-called patients. I suppose there were cases, you know, where a local doctor wanted somebody confined to a place for a short time, and so this was the hospital. But I don't know just how extensively it was used for that. I don't recall any doctors having offices in this building until after World War II, when Dr. Lowe came to Lennox. Maybe we should jump back just a little ways and, you know, mention that Doc Vollen started his practice here in 1914. And in 1964, we had a big open house, or celebration, or whatever you want to call it, in honor of his 50 years in medicine. But it was before 1964, of course, that Lowell came to Lennox. Must have been about 1948 or 50, somewhere there, I'm not sure. And the idea was that, well, Dr. Verlyn's getting old, and so we should encourage him to be in a practice, joint practice with Dr. Lowell. Well, Dr. Lowell seemed to be in favor of that, and so then they came down here and they had their separate offices, and they had a couple of receptionists that I remember. And, well, to put it bluntly, it didn't work. It worked for a little while. But Dr. Verlyn was pretty set in his ways, and he didn't want to be playing second fiddle to this young doctor, you know. And so they had a parting of the ways. Dr. Lowe continued to practice here for a while, and Verlyn moved his offices down there on the corner of the old bank building. Now that would have had to have been sometime after 1954, because that building was still used as a bank until '54, when Oscar Berkey built the new bank up here. And it's 53 maybe it was, I'm not sure. But anyway, so it had to be sometime after that. So Verlyn and Lowell must have practiced here together for a few years, but it wasn't too long. Well, then after Dr. Verlyn left, Dr. Lowell continued to practice for a while, and then he decided to go into a specialty of what do you call that? X-ray. What do you call it?
Radiologist?
Radiology. He was going to be a radiologist. So he went back to school, I guess, for a little while, and he sold his practice to a Dr. Llewellyn. And Dr. Llewellyn practiced here for, well, I think at least a couple of years or more. And then after Dr. Llewellyn, we had Dr. DeBoer. Dr. DeBoer was a immigrant from Holland and had gone to medical school during the war in Holland, which is almost inconceivable to me, but he did. And getting back to Dr. Llewellyn and Lowell, I remember the two people that they employed that I remember was Gladys Curry Surtees, remember her?
Yeah.
As a receptionist, and then Tina Hamilton. Remember Tina Hamilton? Those two I remember worked in here as receptionists. So this was kind of a more modern, clinical atmosphere than the old doctor's office, where the doctor didn't even have a receptionist. But old Doc Verlyn, you know, he hung on, and we gave him a big celebration in '64. He hung on 5 more years. And he finally, in 1969, I believe is when he finally had to give up the ghost. He passed away shortly after that. Now, my memory, I thought it was pretty good, but I do not recall the Verlyns buying this building. I've been told that the Verlyns owned this building at one time. And they must have bought it maybe when Doc used it for a while. I don't know. Does anybody know who the Historical Society bought it from? Nobody here know? I don't know. So anyway,
I do.
pardon?
I think I do.
Who was it?
Mr. Donahoe from Brandon.
he bought it for his family to move here. And that's my daughter-in-law's parents. They bought the house, and there is a picture of the kids out here on the steps. And then the mother came from out east, you know, and he said, oh, I bought this nice big house for our big family, and she came here and she said, but I don't like it.
So they never lived in it.
So they never lived in it, but they do have a picture of it, that they did buy it, and then she kind of thinks that that's who they might have bought it from.
Yeah. Well, that sounds reasonable. Well, there was a doctor down a hole in Sioux Falls.
Yeah.
So anyway, we know that the building was purchased to be used as a museum, and I commend all those that have worked all these many years to make it what it is, and that it's still together. Now the building itself, you gotta admit, it's in pretty darn good shape for 100 years old. They had good bricklayers and pretty good cement work, and the roof is still on. And one feature of this building that always fascinated me before it was renovated, it had that big glass window on the second floor for light, so they could have more light in the surgical room there. And so it was built as a hospital with surgery and everything. Now, I don't know what kind of anesthesia they had, maybe ether mostly, before that was chloroform, I guess, I don't know. But I know that I heard some really tall, stories about those early surgeries, and sometimes the percentage of survival wasn't real good. And, so this Dr. Young, I heard, had a real penchant for the knife. Boy, he wanted to cut into everything. So,
This was also used as an apartment house.
yeah, I'm getting to that. Now, going back to the 1930s and 40s, I remember Mrs. Harney renting out rooms here. And she rented out some long-term and some short-term. People would come to town maybe for one night and stay if she had a room. Or they'd stay for weeks or months. And then even later on, there was an apartment. But I do recall one occasion, this was during the war, before I went to the Army. I was just a kid. And my dad was in dire need of a printer, because we had lost 2 printers. One went to the Army, the other one left, and he needed a printer real bad. And he heard of this guy at Canton, and it was supposed to be a pretty good printer, and he knew his brother. So he hired him, and he came here and stayed in the room, and he worked for 1 week, and it went pretty well that 1 week. The second week he showed up missing. He'd come later, he wouldn't come at all. Finally he didn't show up. And Mrs. Harney got in the telephone, called my dad, said, "You come down there and get this man out of my building." So my dad had to come down here and go see what was wrong. Well, the poor guy was an alcoholic. He was up in his room with about 25 empty bottles. And so they had to call the guy's brother, and they had to carry him out. That was the end of that. But that's just a little memory I have. And then I remember when I was a freshman in high school, it'd be 1939. We had a teacher, her name was, maybe remembers this, his name was Mr. Sletwold. He was our principal and our debate coach, English teacher. And Mr. Sletwold had a wife, but it was not a happy marriage, I guess. And they had an apartment up here. And they had a little boy. And that only lasted couple, 3 weeks, and she moved out, and he was alone the rest of the school year. But I know they lived here then, way back in the 39 or 40. And so then later on, of course, some of you remember the couple I remember most vividly having lived here was the Myers drugstore. Helene and Ray, yeah. Helene and Ray, they lived here quite a while. And when they moved, I don't think they even had to hire a truck or anything, did they? They just walked across the street. Walked that house in the corner. And then they lived there quite a while before Ray passed away. Well, she lived there quite a long time after he passed away, of course. I don't have a lot else to say. Those are my memories of the building and the people that occupied it. And it's got quite a history. I mean, but in summary, you got to admit, it's a good building. And it probably served pretty well for the purpose for which it was built. But it was a pretty short period of time. And it didn't occupy a long history of our town. And so I'm glad to have been a part of the town when this building was in use, and it leaves some memories, and I wish the Historical Society the best, and hope they will be able to continue for many, many years and collect all the memorabilia and all that good stuff, and keep track of our town. And if I ever learned any more, I'll tell you. But